Alright, let's go ahead and get stuck in. I think one thing to help the confusion of this, we're just going to double that up so we can see the inside as well whilst we go through this process. Okay, so let's do what we've done before. We'll go down to a lower subdivision level and we're just going to mask off. I'm not going to use symmetry for this because it's not the same all the way around. I'm just going to mask off an area where I feel the belt would sit on these trousers. Okay, so where that kind of belt line would idealistically be for this pair of trousers. Okay, and it can be tricky just to keep the same thickness going all the way around, but you know, just spend your time getting your mask completely right, seeing where it's at, get a feel for the thickness of that belt line, and of course you can de-solo it to test your prediction there. And you can see mine is pretty much, if not a little bit higher, which is normal here for the back, pretty much on line with where the belt is. Okay, so maybe on the back there I'll come up just a little bit thicker, something like that. Okay, and yes, you've guessed it now. What we're going to do is we're just going to come in with the damn standard brush and we're just going to basically hairline pencil in a small little line that goes all the way around that. Okay, so just try your best to basically draw on that line, and I'm not using the inverse, I'm using the actual standard version. Okay, so just a normal functionality. So I'm creating a groove, and fingers crossed after this whole process, when I remove this mask, we'll have like a very fine sort of pencil line drawn in. Okay, right, are we ready? Let's get rid of it. And yes, there we go. Cool. Alright, cool. So what we can do now is we'll just bring that up to the highest subdivision level and we'll just go once over, smaller line this time. Okay, and we'll just restore any line that did somewhat get lost in that process. Then you can see that as you get closer to other folds you may have, the line will sort of disappear a little bit, but that's normal. Okay. Just go over all the way, and you can see with the power being so, the Z intensity being so weak, it's very easy just to kind of stroke in the general area and just go backwards and forwards a few times just to help exaggerate that line. Okay, right, nice. So in particular chunky areas we're now going to use the inverse and maybe a bigger brush size, and we're just going to thin out that line, that edge a bit, just to make it a bit thinner looking. So using the inverse now, just a quick once over. Now be careful not to create any kind of a mountainous edge here. We want to create a nice thin edge. Okay. And now you probably guessed what's coming already, but we are going to use the pinch tool. Okay, so just use the pinch tool. Let's start across the front. It's always the nicest place to start. I want to go a little bit bigger, and if you want a bit of security, feel free to mask off the top edge just so that you don't change the overall shape of the trousers. Okay, and big size, and you're just going to go once over until you see where you're happy. And I'm happy with that type of tightness. Do you see that? So that's, you want to try and aim for that consistency all the way around. So just go around the trousers now and try and get, you can see the pockets get pulled in a little bit there, so maybe I'll undo that. I'll mask it there a little bit. There we go. And just try and get that thin consistency all the way around. Now of course it's fabric, okay, and don't forget this was probably back in a time when we didn't have machinery to create such accurate seam lines. Okay, so if it's a bit thicker in other areas, then don't worry about it too much. Just mask that off. Okay, let's step back, and there we go. We've got a very clearly defined sort of belt line there. Now you might be thinking, well, shouldn't that be a bit smaller? Yeah, it should be, but just because it's a part we don't see, I've not been giving it any attention essentially. So there you go. There's where the belt line ought to sit. Now you can see here where we will have some loops. We've got some creases coming off here, but before we do those sort of creases, which we will do, let's look at some belt loops first. So the best way I like to do these belt loops, it depends on, what can I say, the rigidity you want them to be on. For example, if you want very synthetic, where's is it Lisa from Blackpink? There she is. So if it was kind of synthetic trousers like this, the loops are very clearly defined. You'd almost want to start with a cube, okay, increase those edges and subdivide them down a little bit to kind of create the very sharp, crisp edges, which is part of, like, you know, machine created fabric. But because our character doesn't really have industrial grade modern machines to do that with, what I'm going to elect to do instead is do an extraction. Okay, so for this part here, what I'm going to do is, and there's lots of different ways of doing this. You could paint all of them in and then extract them all at the same time, or you could just do one, copy that, and, you know, move it all the way around. So I'm feeling a little bit lazy, so let's go ahead and we'll do the extraction method. Okay, so now we need to determine how many belt loops we want. Back in the olden days, they were big, there weren't many of them, they were just placed there by necessity. So I'm going to go for these size kind of loops. So you can see they're quite close to here, so I'm just going to go in there. I'm going to go right to the top and just essentially create a big blocky belt loop. Okay, now it doesn't matter if it's not perfect, alright, but you do want to try and create sharp edges as much as you can, so none of these sort of round edges. You want to very much kind of, well, maybe this should hang down a bit more. Basically, you want a straight edge, straight as you can. Okay, and if it's not as wide or it's not the right size just yet, don't worry about it, we can fix that. So let's see what this extraction looks like if we were to extract this now. Just do that. You can also Control Alt and click to sharpen up your mask. Go to Subtool, Extract. What do we get? We can't see anything because of the belt, which is very frustrating. So we're just going to have to disable said belt. Still can't see anything because of the vest. Thanks, vest. Disable the vest. And what was the other thing that's in the way? Ah, this strap, of course. So this set of straps here, we need to disable them as well. Okay, now we can finally see what we're doing. An extraction of 0 to, oof, that's big and chunky. Let's put the smoothness up a little bit. Okay, it's not looking too bad, but the thickness is way off the charts. Let's do 0.05. That's a bit small. Maybe let's try 0.01. 0.01, it looks okay. It might be a bit chunky, but we want it more chunky than anything else. What about T-corners? Nah. Smoothness up to 100? Okay, so with the higher subdivision levels, we are getting this kind of crispiness. So it doesn't really matter. Let's just go with something like that. SMT, not Shin Megami Tensei, but smoothness of 50. A thickness of 0.01 works out for me, and let's have extract. Okay, and it's, sorry, accept. There we go. Right, so with that kind of belt loop extracted, we're not going to do anything to it yet, except we're going to keep polygroups. So we go over to our geometry, we'll go to ZRemesh, we'll ask it to keep groups, but we're going to tell it to aim for about 1000 polys, keep adaptive on and all that good stuff in ZRemesh. Okay, we want to bring it down quite a bit, and let's halve it again. Okay, so now what we're starting to get is we're starting to get these rounded edges. So we've done this before. All we're going to have to do is, with the trousers still there so we can see what it sort of looks like. Okay, we're just going to move, kind of push these into corners, just like we did for the shoes and the boots. Okay, going to push them and try and turn them into sharp corners as much as you can. And now I said, if you want very kind of sharp belt loops, you just want to use a cube and save yourself this hassle. However, I'm looking for more kind of softer fabric kind of loops, so I don't mind if they sort of bow out a little bit like this here. Okay, because I feel like that's the more natural part of what these trousers would have more realistically been like. Even though our character's kind of fantasy-ish, well, she is fantasy, I should say, she's not ish. Okay, I do want to adhere to some realistic rules. Okay, so with something like that, we're actually going to do the opposite now. We're going to say, hey, double it in ZRemesh. Okay, and it's smoothed it out again, so let's gonna do that. We'll go to crease, tell it to crease them, and then we'll ask it to keep the creases, and we'll Z remesh. Okay, there we go. Okay, so now we've got some straight edges. It's a little bit wibbly wobbly, but we do have our basic block. Okay, so just try to push the side edge in a little bit. So if you're looking at it face on, you shouldn't see any, well, any purple in my case. Okay, and just get the shape right, head on, and there you go. Okay, right. Okay, so there's one belt loop. It's obviously way too chunky, right? And oh, we got a little bit of an issue here. Okay, so it's kind of creased the wrong edge, which is a shame, but we can fix that with the damn standard brush. We'll just select that edge instead. That's because it's so low. Let's push that guy up a bit. Okay. That edge is kind of faded away a bit, but that's just because that was pushed into the trousers. Arguably we won't see that. And then here, this is our standard brush. We'll just kind of exaggerate this area a bit. And that area. Damn standard. Let's bring that to an edge using the inverse of it. Same here. So we have kind of messed a little bit with the topology of it all. But it's nothing another run through Z remesher simply won't fix. Okay, so let's take the creases off. Z remesh. Okay, there we go. That's a bit better. Okay, so with that there, like so, we can now start to smooth. Well, maybe not just yet actually. Let's go one subdivision higher. And now we can sort of smooth these corners in because they're fabric, right? They're not going to be chiseled blocks. So just going to gently smooth them. Alright. Now, this is where it gets a bit tricky. So let's go down to the smallest subdivision level. And we want to sort of create, well, we need our belt back actually. Okay, so the waist belt is here. So where I've created one, there actually wouldn't be one, or it's kind of overlapped here at the time being. So you want it to basically encapsulate this belt here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to raise that up. We start with the edges, push down the middle. Okay, now you wouldn't see this here because the belt would be sticking out a lot further. So this area here is the part that's kind of overlapped back round again. So if you can picture that there. So I'm only going to worry about this thickness here. So that belt loop there is actually quite correct. But, oops. Let's hide the belt again. I'm going to push it back down here. So starting with the edges, I'm just going to pull them back down. Like that. Back into the trousers, okay, and just adjust the shape a little bit, and what you should get is this element here. Okay, you should get that sort of tapering down, and you can do that a little bit for the tops as well. In fact, you should. Okay, now there's multiple ways to do that. You could also, I'm sure you've already figured it out, trim dynamic your way. Okay, so just on that edge there, you can just sort of demolish it a little bit, smooth it out. Okay, and that creates a more natural kind of curve. You can really play into it if you'd like. And depending upon the fabric of your trousers, trim dynamic the front of it, smooth it out. Okay, so what I would always say with belt loops is start with the edges, pull the edges in first, and then tackle the middle part, because the middle part, if it's a bit too bulbous, the trim dynamic brush instantly sorts that out, like that. Okay, so don't worry too much about the center bit. Let's just check to make sure that that's still going over the belt somewhat. Let's bring out our move tool again. Okay. There. Okay, something like that is fine. And we'll just trim dynamic that up. Okay, so before we go ahead and start copying this guy, we want to make sure we put all the kind of details-ish in there. Okay, so let's hide that belt again. Let's just do a quick little seam line idea around the edges. Okay, so I like to do my lines horizontally, so I'm going to rotate it like that. And then somewhere like that, just going to, you can see there with a large damn standard brush size, it naturally creates that kind of pinching at the edges there. Let's solo it. And just go all the way around, up to the tops as well. And do the same for the other side. Try not to catch the edges so much that you actually start to change the shape of the edges. Just try to stay just on the inside if you like. Okay. And don't forget to carry that effect through a little bit on the bottom as well, because you will see it sometimes, especially if you're looking up at the character. And then just do that as well here. If it's getting a bit out of hand, don't forget, use the alternate version of the damn standard brush, the inverse function. And of course, your pinch tool can always help you out here. You can just sort of pinch it so it's being more conformist to the outside edge there. Okay, and if it's changed the shape of it too much, use your move brush and adjust as necessary. Just come back in with a damn standard brush a bit more around here. There we go. Okay, right. So when you're happy with one, essentially, you can now copy that over. Some belt loops actually have a horizontal stitch going this way. Yeah, I think I quite like that, so I'm going to elect to do that. Just to make it look like it's actually sewn back into the trouser edge. And if you've got a line like this, like a kind of sticking out bit, you can move tool that away, or you can damn standard brush it. I'm gonna have to use a collection of both. Something like okay. Okay, don't worry if it's a little bit wobbly, because again, that's quite normal for this type of fabric. Okay, and there you go. That's how you do a belt loop essentially. So it's just about going all the way around now with that idea, putting it in places where you'd want to, all the way around the belt. So what we can do now is we've got this here. Let's rename it so that we don't lose it, and we'll say belt loop. So I'm just going to go for 2 on the front, and I think 2 on the side, 2 on the back, and then 1 on the side. Okay, that seems to be the most logical for me. Just do this far away from the model so you can see it. We'll duplicate that subtool, and let's put this gizmo in its proper place first before we do any kind of moving, because this will save us time and effort in the long run. So you want to align it to the belt loop's kind of plane. Try your best to put it in the middle. Right, now with that locked in, we can essentially move this guy where we want him to be. So around the back, let's flip it round. And just like we would in another 3D modeling package, it isn't like a digital sculpting package, we can just place it where we'd like. Okay, now chances are it's not going to be a 100% absolute perfect fit. You will probably have to come in, and most likely will have to come in and adjust some of the sizes and shapes of all this. Okay, it's not going to be a one size fits all approach, unfortunately. And I think I'll put this sort of, I'll put it on the outside edge. The outside edge of that line there, you can see going down the buttocks. So at the moment, I'm only going to focus on one side because I'm feeling even lazier. And I'll show you why in a minute. Because once we've got one side pretty much where we'd like it to be, and you can see this is starting to cause a... I feel like these are too close. I feel like they are too close. Yeah, I think I could just get away with doing two. Just... yeah. What do you guys think? Anyway, I'm going to do that. I can always do it again later. So I'm just going to do two. Two on the front, two on the back. Done. That might be me being lazy, but I don't think so. I don't think it is. It's just, I don't know, they look too close to each other. Suppose you could always do two on the front, one on the side, and one in the back. But I like having the back split into two, so... you know what? I think I'm going to have to maybe do that. Even though I don't like it, I'm probably going to have to put one in the center there. Because having nothing on the side looks a bit strange. So I don't like that. Where did my gizmo go? Oh no, I put it over here. It's gone. Is it gone? Oh dear. There we go. Right. I just deactivated it. Okay. Can be a bit tricky to place them sometimes. Just try your best to sort of get it in the best place possible. Right, we'll duplicate this guy and we'll put him around here. So without the back part there being too close now, he looks better placed now. Okay. Right, I'm sure you can see what the problem is here. We've got this shirt taking up far too much territory, so we've got to put it in its place. Okay, now remember, it's playing fine with the belt, because that's what we pushed it to conform to last time, but we didn't really bother about the trousers, so now we're going to have to tell it to play nice with the trousers. You can see there, we've got to push a lot of this back up. There we go. Okay. I've probably done it too much now. That's fine, the belt will cover this. So let's put the belt back in, speaking of. Okay, so you can see here, this strap here needs to be adjusted a bit. Let's go down to the lowest subdivision level. Use our Move Topological brush. Big sizes, start with the edges first, don't forget. And bring them out like that. Okay, and feel free to push in and modify the angle and everything like that afterwards. Okay. Nope, don't auto save ZBrush. Okay, and do the same for the back. So the back, the belt hangs a little bit lower, so I'm actually just going to move this down a bit. And I'm actually going to go to the trouser mesh, bring it down to the lowest subdivision level, and just bring down the back a little bit so it's a bit straighter. There we go. Okay. So you probably guess what's going to happen next, but essentially, if we go to our belt loops here and we duplicate them, so 1 1, move it down, duplicate that, 2 1, duplicate that, 3, and we're just going to merge these guys. Merge it. Yeah, we could keep it on the highest subdivision level. That's fine. Merge 1 1. We'll merge 1 1 to 3. So now essentially we've got 3 of these, and we'll go to deformation and mirror it in X. Okay, so they're a little bit off So we do have to bring them back over and say, hey guys, you're meant to be over here. And you see that more or less, actually we didn't need to do the back, I forgot. More or less they go in the right places. So actually, could put them back now. Something like that. Okay. And with that, of course, you can go back to your drawing mode, solo them out. We don't need the back. So let's group him, polygroup, group masked, and we'll do our usual trick of modify topology and delete him. And then last little part for this video, it's on higher subdivision levels, but we can just be a bit careful about it. Take a giant move brush and essentially just move him into position. Ignore the other belt on the top for now, just pretend it's not there. And just do your belt loop magic here. Okay, and do the same for the front. Okay, right. So with that all done, let's increase the subdivision on the trousers, and we can see, there we go guys, right? So that trousers now, I've got belt loops in there. I will probably change the final position of them all later on, but for now, they are there. Okay, so with those in place now, we can actually go ahead and start creating some folds like we've got here, and then we can also finally put in the kind of crotch area as well. Okay. Right, fabulous work guys, well done. Okay, we're kind of almost there with the trousers, maybe a couple of more videos and we'll be ready to move on to something else.